Thank you very much. You're bound to hear things that have already been said so far, but I'll stick to my keynote speech because I'm kind of short on time, and I think I'll pick up most of the things that have been discussed. President Metsola, Ambassador Putzer, distinguished guests. Every generation of policymakers faces a moment when the future is still open and decisions retain the power to shape what comes next. We are in such a moment now. The question before us tonight is whether Europe will act with a seriousness that this moment demands, or whether it will continue to produce frameworks of great sophistication but inefficient force. I will address three things: the gap between the European ambition and European investment that has made this question urgent, the industrial model that already points towards an answer, and the principle that must govern the alliance between democratic societies and companies that build our digital future. Because in the digital race now unfolding, if we do not act with the determination this moment requires, as Churchill once said, events will pass very largely outside the scope of conscious choice. The scale of the underlying challenge deserves to be stated plainly. Between 2025, the United States invested roughly $450 billion in artificial intelligence. Europe invested $45 billion, a tenfold divergence, not a shortfall. The United States holds 75% of global AI compute. Europe holds 5%. In 2025, American companies produced 40 notable AI models. European companies produced one. Mario Draghi's diagnosis remains the most precise on record. Europe is not failing to generate ideas. It is failing to translate ideas into companies and companies into scale. But here, we must be precise about something the European policy debate sometimes often obscure. When we speak of American AI investment, we're not speaking primarily of public programs or state funding. We're speaking about private capital, deep, liquid, and structurally committed. In 2025 alone, the leading American technology groups spent an estimated $400 billion on AI infrastructure. In 2026, this figure is projected to reach $650 billion, a 60% increase in a single year, funded most entirely from integrated capital markets, a venture capital ecosystem of continental scale, pension funds mandated to take risk, and equity markets that reward long-term technological conviction. Europe invokes public investment as the answer, but public investment, however necessary, cannot substitute for what is structurally absent. What Europe lacks is not ambition, is not talent. It lacks three things that only deep structural reform can provide: the completion of the capital markets union, already mentioned, so that 300 billion the European savers send abroad each year can be invested in European champions instead, a genuine single market for digital services so that a company that succeeds in Milan or Munich can scale across 450 million consumers without confronting 27 different regulatory environments, and a venture capital ecosystem with the depth and risk appetite to accompany European companies from early innovation to global scale. Until those three conditions are met, the gap will not close, regardless of how many strategies we push. Over the past decade, Europe has developed a distinctive regulatory philosophy. We heard it before, what scholars have come to call the Brussels effect: the capacity to set high standards, codify them in comprehensive legislation, and allow their gravitational force to draw global actors into compliance, that has given Europe genuine norm-setting influence. Consumer protection, data rights, and platform accountability are now debated on European terms, well beyond the confines of the city. But a regulatory philosophy can become a liability the moment it is applied without accounting for what it costs when miscalibrated. And here I want to invoke a quite famous entrepreneur who represents in many respects the exact opposite of the model Europe should pursue, precisely because his argument contains a warning we cannot afford to ignore. In his famous book, 0 to 1, he argues that truly transformative companies are built not by competing in crowded markets, but by creating something so distinctly valuable that competition becomes for a time beside the point. His conclusion is that monopoly is the natural destination of successive innovation. This, as a normative proposition, we must firmly reject. A world shaped by that logic is a world of concentrated power, absent accountability, and democratic deficit. It is precisely the world that good regulation exists to prevent. But this observation diagnoses something real: a regulatory framework that with the best of intention makes it structurally difficult for any European company to achieve meaningful scale before being subjected to oversight designed for entities that have already achieved it, what Ambassador told us before. The result is a market where no European challenger reaches the scale needed to fund frontier research, attract global talent, or define the terms of the next technological cycle. Sometimes I have the feeling that we've been regulating for the market we feared, rather than designing the conditions of the one we need. The corrective is calibration, not abdication. An under-regulated digital environment does not produce open markets. It produces captured one, where the largest actors write the rules for everyone else. The answer is regulation that enables rather than preempts, that treat consumer protection and European competitiveness as the complementary objectives they generally are. Bernard de Chartres, so that we go back to Europe, observed in the 12th century that we can see further, not because of our stature, but because we stand on the shoulders of giants. I want to use that image tonight, not as an intellectual metaphor, but as an industrial description. Italy's economic strength, I'll come to my country for an example, does not rest on a handful of dominant corporations. It rests on an ecosystem. Anchor companies that carry global market access and absorb strategic risk, surrounded by a dense fabric of small and medium enterprises that provide the precision, the agility, and the specialist innovation that no large organization can generate internally. The SMEs stand on the shoulders of giants. The giants, in turn, draw their vitality from the dwarfs. The value flows in both directions. That is not a weakness of the Italian model. It is its defining intelligence. This logic must now be applied to the AI economy, deliberately and at scale. The partnership between Essilor-Luxottica and Meta, which anchors another gathering, illustrates this model. An Italian industrial champion bringing design excellence and manufacturing identity. A technological platform providing the AI infrastructure. Behind Essilor-Luxottica, there are thousands of specialist suppliers whose precision makes the final product possible. European craftsmanship meeting American technology, each stronger because of the other. An AI transition that bypasses this fabric, concentrating the benefits in large platforms while leaving workers, small businesses, and entire productive regions outside its orbit, will not merely fail economically. It will generate a political reaction that is entirely foreseeable and entirely avoidable. If we choose now to build the right architecture, we must do it from the start. And Enrico Letta's decision and proposal of the 28th regime goes in the right direction, as President Metsola says. But I want to close now, I'm sorry for the long speech, with two propositions, because each is incomplete without the other. The first, technological interoperability is democratic interoperability. Compatible systems share standards, and openly governed digital infrastructure are not simply technical preferences. They are the connective tissue of society that intend to remain coherent, legible to one another, and capable of collective decision-making. The architecture of the digital world encodes choices about power and accountability. These choices, once made at scale, are very difficult to reverse. Europe must build that architecture consciously, not leave it to be determined by default, by others, or by the mere accumulation of market decisions. The second proposition is its mirror and its proof. Democratic interoperability guarantees technological interoperability. Where the rule of law, open governance, and civic accountability are present, digital infrastructure remains open, investable, and generative. When they are absent, technology itself becomes a tool of closure. We've seen this with stark clarity in recent weeks. In certain capitals where mobile internet has been switched off by authority, commerce, logistics, and daily economic life ground to a halt within days. The lesson is not political, it is economic, and it is unambiguous. Open societies and open networks are not parallel phenomena. They are the same phenomenon, expressed at different layers. They express the same civilization. These are goals we must build, and building them require a joint commitment from the actors that share this room tonight. European legislators and regulators must build a framework that treats the right to benefit from technology as a genuine civic interest, alongside the right to be protected from its harms. The companies in this room must understand that co-designing democratic digital spaces rather than simply operating within or around them, is the only foundation for durable success in a market that is ultimately composed of people. Technological interoperability and democratic interoperability rise together, or neither rises at all. That is the commitment this evening for all of us. Thank you very much.